Thanks everyone for joining us today at the AWCI and participating in Construction Safety Week. Today's safety talk is sidewalks, hidden hazards. If you're like me, many times you've been on a construction site in the downtown area and have seen aerial lifts or scissor lifts or even forklifts operating on the sidewalks. Many times when we show up, the construction site's already going and this equipment's already there operating. The assumption is that the sidewalk is safe. When we go out and do our site walkthrough, we're all looking above for overhead objects, many times electrical lines or other things that might impede using an aerial lift. But seldom do we look under our feet and assume that the sidewalk is safe. If we were to operate on this sidewalk, many of us would identify the grate in this picture. We would recognize it as a hazard and we would do something to protect this area. Our assumption is that this vault is where the grate is and maybe just a little bit wider, but that might be a wrong assumption. If we were to view this sidewalk, we would probably think everything is okay on it. We would not necessarily recognize that there's a potential vault underneath this sidewalk. Here we see a garbage truck that actually fell through the sidewalk. Garbage trucks weigh around 33,000 pounds. We would probably see this and say, why would he even pull up there? Well, we do it with lifts and it's done quite frequently. This is a 60-foot lift that weighs approximately 22,900 pounds. An 80-foot lift weighs 33,000 pounds. It's the same amount of weight that we see in that garbage truck. As you notice, this sidewalk isn't even a city street sidewalk. It's a private sidewalk leading into a building. Many times vaults run up to the building from the city sidewalk itself. So it's important not to only evaluate sidewalks on city streets, but also those running up to buildings as well. Here we see a little mini vault, electrical vault, and you can see something broke through. We don't know what, but a lot of times these are looked at and said, oh, well, it's got a metal cover on it. It should protect us. Here we can see someone that made that judgment call. Unfortunately, this lift fell over and it was a bad day for everybody, I'm sure. But we can see it doesn't take much for these lifts to tip over. That little bit of space was enough to flip this lift over. Here we see a utility truck operating on a city street as well. You can tell by their face they're not having a good day. The truck fell through, I'm sure just pulling up to the building. This truck weighs approximately 16,000 pounds. Here we see a genie lift operating in the area. Looks like it was operating over what was a metal grate at one time. This lift weighs approximately 11,415 pounds. You know, as we walk through the sites, we look at the areas typically where we're going to be working, but it's important to survey the entire area. Many times we don't expect the lift to be in that area, but they're just maneuvering around the building, maybe parking it for the night, maybe moving it to get refueled, and so on. So it's important to not only look at the areas you're going to be working in, but where the lift might end up. Here we see a lift that was just moving down the street. I'm sure they weren't going to be working in this area, looking at the surroundings there. However, just moving down the sidewalk, it fell through. So here's a typical drawing of some of the city's sidewalks underneath. Many times the space is used by the building itself for storage and other purposes. I've been told and have seen them in the past that restaurants up above often use these areas for wine cellars. Um, so it is important to talk to the general contractor before planning on putting a lift of any sort on a sidewalk and understand what's underneath. Sometimes a general contractor doesn't know, but raising the question can prevent others from getting hurt as well. Here we see a vault that you could not access from the inside of the building. As you see, the metal I-beams run across, but the spacing in between is where the problem lies. Remember, there's only approximately 4 inches of concrete over top and will not support most lifts from operating on them. Here's another vault that we can see. This one the space was being used by the building. As you can see, it opens up underneath. By walking through the building, you probably should have been able to identify this. So it is important to not only walk through the building and look for these areas, but to walk on the outside. When you're walking on the outside, there may not be a metal grate along that building, but further down the sidewalk, you could find where the grate accesses are. A lot of times these vaults can run not only the length of one building, but a whole city block as well. So it's important to walk around the entire building looking for grates, manhole covers, even those little mini boxes, access panels. They're all areas for identifying potential vaults. So what do you do to protect yourself? Well, a lot of times you can use metal plates over the top of these. Some areas you have to shore up the area, but it is important to get with the general contractor and the manufacturer of the lift, the lift's representative, to have them come out and come up with a plan. Sometimes it's shoring, sometimes it's plating, but you have to come up with a plan. The best plan is to actually operate in the street. If you can shut down the street, that's the safest place for your lift to operate at. The street is designed to hold much heavier weight. It has semi-trucks rolling across it, and that is the proper place to use the lift. But if you can't, it's important to understand what you have to do to protect these areas. Here's that picture of that wine cellar I was telling you about. You can find them. They are all over the cities. Pretty cool areas. However, you can see this area is, the old block goes back in time. So I hope you've learned here today something about sidewalks. Don't take them for granted. Don't think they're going to support your equipment without actually getting out there and looking. I hope everybody has a good day and stay safe.